Hi, this is the third part of the review of Chapter 2 for our textbook. And I'm going to start on page 130 of the book. And we're going to be talking about the statistical functions of count, average, min, and max. So we're going to be covering these four areas from rows 13 through 17. Now, right now I'm in the formula view, but I'm going to switch back to come outside of the formula view. So some of the things that I want to look at here is I have a count that I want to do, and what exactly do I want to count? I want to count the number of categories that I have here. So I'm going to sit on cell D13, and I want to do a count. Now, I already know how to do a total. I basically did the equal sum. But here, I want to do a count. And what I could do is equal C-O-U-N-T and left parenthesis. Count will count any numeric values. Now, in this case, I only want to count how many categories I have. I don't want to include the totals. So I've selected equal count, left parenthesis, D3 colon D11. And if I hit enter, I see that I have a choice of 9. So the count. Now, if I had modified this formula, and instead of counting here, let me undo this. I like to show you errors. Equal count, left parenthesis, and I had selected, because after all, here are my categories, I would get a 0. Count only counts anything that has a number in it. So let me come back in. And if I undo again, okay, oops, I want to undo that, redo that. I went too far. Okay, so I'm sitting on cell D13 and equal count. So I only want to count these pieces here. Now, it only counts something that is numeric. But notice what happens if I modify. Let's say that I had household utilities of 0. Oh, I don't know, perhaps I'm going to be living at home, right? 0 is a value, right? As opposed to if, I'm going to undo this, as opposed to if I just totally delete and have nothing there. If nothing for household utilities, then I only have 8 categories. It does not recognize the household categories. So it's just something to wrap your brain around, is that a 0 is counted even if it shows up as a dash in a financial sense, it's counted as a number. But if there is absolutely nothing in the cell, then it is considered something that we're not going to count. So that is what we call our number of categories. That is what we use count. Now, this next piece we're going to do, oh, I should mention number of categories. One more thing with the count is, if I undo the count for a second, I could come into home, auto sum, and there's also a count here, and it says count numbers. Notice that it's trying to count this particular cell, the totals, and I don't want that. So I would have to reselect. So you have a handful of different ways that you could do this. Now, the average spend is going to be in the same column here. How do I want to calculate that? Well, equal AVE. Now, you would think AVE, but that's not a particular function. I have all these other functions, and I have to select the one that I want. So you have to spell out the name. Average. It returns the average arithmetic mean of its arguments, which can be numbers or names, arrays, or references that contain numbers. So average, and my left parenthesis, and again, it's going to be the D3 to D11, and I'm going to hit enter. So something I hope you're not starting to notice now is that there's 4 parts to every function here. The equal sign is the first one. The name of the function, average. The parentheses, there's the third part. The fourth part are the arguments that are passed. In this case, we're passing the argument of D3 colon D11. So we have a handful of different ways that we can go with this. So if I hit enter, there I have my 1994. Now, what if I want to go into this in a different way? Well, I could, if I undo, is I'm sitting on cell D14. It's important to be sitting or to have the selected cell, the one that you want to be dealing with. If I come up to my auto sum, I have something called average. And notice again, average is trying to include all of the numbers. It doesn't know the difference between what's in cell D13 or D12. So you would have to just accommodate and set up what you want. Now another way to find these is if you go into formulas, and we have all sorts of possibilities in here. We have our auto sum, we have the formulas we were looking at. I have recently used, I could click on average. In this particular case, I could set up in here what it is that I want to average out. Now because I want to average cells that are sitting next to each other or that are adjacent to each other, I would select here the number, and instead of D13, I would enter D11 through D3. And it would do the same thing. And notice as I'm starting to enter this, it's giving me the formulas here. It's giving me an answer. And I can say, okay. Now, I can't tell. Oops, that one didn't quite turn out. Oh, because I already had one in there. It's averaging and averaging. So I have two averages. I need to remove that. So I want to have just the one. So there's my 1994. So a couple of different ways that you can do average. And again, remember, 4 pieces to any function. The equal signs, the function name, and the parentheses, and then the arguments. Now, min is an interesting one. This is the smallest number. So it doesn't matter how many small numbers there are. It won't tell you where the small number exists on this. But we just want to know what the lowest spend is and what the highest spend is for max. So for min, I could be sitting on my home button, auto sum. I could click on min. And again, I selected min because my label says min. But I only want to select my D3 to D11 because 9 is just the number of categories. And what do I have here? My minimum number, my smallest number is 1200. And I could do the same thing with my auto sum here, and I could select max. And again, modify it to accommodate just the categories that I want to look at, so that I have my answer sitting there. Now in this case, I was able to use the functions, but I did not have to go into any relative or absolute cell referencing because I didn't need those. So it's nice that I don't have to deal with that. So I have my formulas in column D from cells D13 down through D16. And let's say that I want to have the same set of formulas. This is this year's values, but I want to have the same values set up so I understand what I had for last year. So a number of different ways, again, you can copy. I could click on the copy button, and I could click on paste, or I could, having it set up, I could just select and copy over. The point is, I have the same abilities that I've seen with some of the other formulas that I was creating, so that I can copy my formulas over. So I can't tell in the end how anyone did any particular formula, except to say that there was formulas were set up using these functions of count, average, min, and max. So now I'm looking at this and I'm saying to myself, okay, what other things might my target audience want to see here? Well, gee, I have some things here that I might want to consider. Maybe I want to sort some of this data that I have in some sort of order. So I'm going to select or highlight from cell A2 through F11. And I want to do a sort. So I've selected the data. So I'm going to click on data. And I have an option in here called data. And I have sort and filter. Now I think rather than go into these quicker sorts, I'm going to go into the button that says sort. And up pops a dialog box. So what do I want to sort by? Well, let's say I want to sort by the percent of total. So I want to know where my highest. So if I kind of peruse this, I can see that that would come out with the 19.5 if I go highest to lowest. So I'm going to sort by percent of total. And it's up to you if you want to go smallest to largest or largest to smallest. I'll go largest to smallest. And I have two that are 8.4%. So I am going to add a second level here. But my data has headers. Totally up to you if you want your data to have headers. It's how you set up the data. Because I selected category percent of total, because I selected row 2, I need to say that my data has headers. If I had deselected it, it would consider that row 2 to be part of the data, not labels. So I want to make certain that I accommodate for the fact that these are labels, not to be part of the sort. Now, I could add a second level or a sub-level, and this would be by clicking on the add level. And let's say I want to do it by category. So if in the case of my 8.4%, my gasoline would come before my food, and my cell value is A to Z. So if I have numbers, I'm going to see largest to smallest or smallest to largest. But if I have alphabet, I would have my A to Z or my Z to A. Now when I click on OK, before I click OK, I want to get a sense of where my numbers are. Now when I click on OK, hopefully you will see that the numbers accommodate, or they basically set up so now it's sorted in descending order, largest to smallest. And because I had three, not two, but I have gasoline, then insurance, then vacation. If you undo, you can see that I had, oh yes, there it was. I had gasoline, I had insurance, and I had vacation. So if I redo, my categories and my percent of totals go back to the sort. So it's really nice sometimes you want to have your data sorted.